Winslow Junction, the crossroads of the Jersey Pines. Prologue: The Forgotten Giant. Deep within the forests of southern New Jersey lies one of the most important railroad locations most people have never heard of. Drivers speeding down the Atlantic City Expressway pass nearby without realizing they are crossing a landscape that once served as the beating heart of South Jersey's transportation network. Hunters walk through the woods. Pine trees sway in the wind. Birds nest where telegraph wires once hummed. At first glance, Winslow Junction appears unremarkable. Yet hidden beneath the trees is the story of a railroad empire. For nearly a century, this remote location functioned as one of the most complex rail intersections in the northeastern United States. Trains from Philadelphia, Camden, Atlantic City, Cape May, Vineland, Millville, and dozens of smaller communities converged here. Passenger expresses carrying wealthy vacationers raced through at high speed, while coal trains, freight trains, mail trains, and local passenger runs threaded their way through an intricate maze of tracks. During its peak years, thousands of people passed through the junction every day. Millions passed through during its lifetime. Entire railroad companies depended upon it. Today much of that world has vanished. But the earth still remembers. The towering embankments remain. The bridges survive. The alignments of forgotten railroads are still visible from the air. Winslow Junction is not merely a railroad crossing. It is the archaeological remains of an industrial civilization. Chapter 1: Before the Railroad. To understand Winslow Junction, we must first understand the world that existed before it. For thousands of years, the region formed part of the vast Pine Barrens, a wilderness covering more than 1 million acres across southern New Jersey. New Jersey Pine Barrens was never easy country. The soil was sandy. Farming was difficult. Roads were poor. Travel was slow. Dense forests stretched for miles in every direction. The landscape was dotted with cranberry bogs, cedar swamps, iron furnaces, charcoal pits, glass factories, and tiny settlements connected by primitive roads. People lived far apart. A journey that takes 20 minutes today might have consumed an entire day. Then came the railroad age. Beginning in the 1830s and accelerating after the Civil War, railroads transformed America. Suddenly it became possible to move people and freight at speeds never before imagined. South Jersey was no exception. The Pine Barrens were about to become a transportation corridor. Nobody knew it yet, but one isolated clearing in the woods would become the center of that network. Chapter 2: Atlantic City changes everything. The true catalyst behind Winslow Junction was not industry. It was tourism. In the mid-1800s, Atlantic City was emerging as one of America's premier seaside resorts. Atlantic City attracted visitors from Philadelphia, New York, Baltimore, and beyond. Before railroads, reaching the coast was difficult. The trip involved uncomfortable wagon rides over rough roads. Railroads changed that overnight. When the Camden and Atlantic Railroad opened in 1854, it revolutionized shore travel. Passengers could now travel from Philadelphia to Atlantic City in a fraction of the previous time. The route became an immediate success. Suddenly thousands of tourists wanted to visit the shore. More trains were needed. More tracks were needed. More railroad companies wanted a share of the profits. Competition exploded. And that competition would eventually create Winslow Junction. Chapter 3: The Railroad Wars. By the late 19th century, southern New Jersey had become a battleground. Several railroad companies were competing for dominance. The major players included Camden and Atlantic Railroad, Philadelphia and Reading interests, Pennsylvania Railroad interests, Atlantic City Railroad, West Jersey and Seashore Railroad. Each company wanted faster routes. Each wanted more passengers. Each wanted more freight. Railroads were among the largest corporations in America at the time. Their executives thought on a massive scale. Instead of building simple lines, they created sprawling networks. Tracks multiplied across South Jersey. Branch lines connected small towns. Industrial spurs served factories. Freight routes crossed passenger routes. Soon a major interchange point became necessary. Winslow was the answer. Situated in a geographically ideal location, it allowed railroads from multiple directions to meet and exchange traffic. What began as a practical solution soon evolved into something far larger. Chapter 4. Building the Junction. Creating Winslow Junction was not as simple as laying rails across the forest floor. Engineers faced enormous challenges. They had to design a location capable of handling passenger trains, freight trains, express trains, mail trains, shore traffic, through traffic, local traffic. The solution was extraordinary. Over time, Winslow Junction developed into a multi-level railroad complex featuring embankments, flyovers, interlockings, bridges, sidings, switching tracks, maintenance facilities, and signal systems. Huge amounts of earth were moved. Workers used horses, steam shovels, and manual labor to construct embankments rising high above the surrounding landscape. The scale was remarkable. Even today, standing atop some of the surviving embankments gives a sense of how much labor was involved. The project transformed a flat section of Pine Barrens wilderness into an engineered landscape. Every hill, grade, and alignment existed for a reason. Chapter 5. The 6 Flyovers. The feature that made Winslow Junction famous among railroad historians was its flyover system. Most railroad intersections force trains to cross each other's paths. That creates delays. A train heading east might have to stop while another train passes north. As traffic increases, congestion becomes severe. Winslow solved this problem through grade separation. Instead of crossing at the same level, tracks crossed above and below one another. The junction eventually contained 6 separate rail-over-rail crossings. This was extraordinarily advanced for the era. Imagine standing in the woods in 1910. A freight train rumbles beneath you. Minutes later, an Atlantic City Express races overhead. Soon after, another train crosses on a different route. The entire area functioned like a giant mechanical puzzle. Signals coordinated movements. Switch operators directed traffic. Dispatchers monitored train locations. The system allowed an incredible volume of traffic to move efficiently. Few rural locations anywhere in America possessed infrastructure this sophisticated. Chapter 6. The Human Machine. Railroads were not just steel and wood. They were people. Winslow Junction depended on hundreds of workers. Engineers guided locomotives through the complex. Firemen shoveled coal into roaring fireboxes. Conductors supervised passengers. Brakemen worked dangerous jobs atop moving freight cars. Signal maintainers inspected equipment. Track gangs repaired rails. Telegraph operators relayed train orders. Switch tenders manually controlled track movements. Round-the-clock activity kept the junction alive. A single mistake could lead to disaster. Every worker understood the responsibility resting on their shoulders. The junction operated 24 hours a day. There were no weekends. No holidays. The railroad never slept. Chapter 7. The Golden Age of Steam. Around 1900 to 1930, Winslow Junction reached its peak. This was the age of steam. Massive locomotives dominated the landscape. Smoke plumes could be seen for miles. The ground shook as trains thundered through the junction. During summer weekends, Atlantic City traffic became overwhelming. Vacation trains arrived one after another. Families carrying suitcases crowded coaches. Businessmen read newspapers. Children pressed their faces against windows. Luxury travelers rode in elegant Pullman cars. Meanwhile, freight traffic continued uninterrupted. Coal, lumber, produce, seafood, building materials, mail. Everything moved through Winslow. At peak periods, dozens of train movements could occur daily. The Junction became one of South Jersey's busiest transportation centers. The surrounding woods echoed constantly with whistles, steam releases, and the clatter of steel wheels. For local residents, those sounds became the soundtrack of everyday life. Chapter 8: The night of July 2, 1922. Every great transportation hub eventually experiences tragedy. Winslow Junction's most infamous moment came during the summer of 1922. Late on July 2nd, train number 33, known as the Owl, approached the junction. It was traveling at tremendous speed. Some estimates placed the train near 90 miles per hour. Then disaster struck. The train entered a diverging route. The speed was too great. Cars left the rails. Wooden passenger coaches shattered. Steel twisted. Passengers were thrown violently. The derailment killed 7 people and injured dozens more. Rescue crews rushed to the scene. Doctors worked through the night. Newspapers across the region reported the tragedy. Investigators spent weeks examining evidence. The accident remains one of New Jersey's most significant railroad disasters. For years afterward, railroad employees spoke of the wreck in hushed tones. It became part of Winslow's legend. Chapter 9: The Blue Comet. Few trains have captured the imagination of railroad enthusiasts like the legendary Blue Comet. Introduced in 1929, it represented the height of luxury rail travel. Painted in striking blue and cream colors, the train looked futuristic compared to ordinary passenger trains. Passengers enjoyed exceptional comfort. Its reputation spread nationwide. The Blue Comet became one of America's most famous trains. Though its life was relatively short, it became forever associated with South Jersey railroading. When enthusiasts visit Winslow Junction today, many imagine the Blue Comet racing through the pines at speed, its polished cars gleaming in the sunlight. The image has become iconic. Chapter 10: The Fall of the Railroad Kingdom. The decline began slowly. Then it accelerated. After World War II, America embraced the automobile. Highways expanded rapidly. Families purchased cars. Commercial aviation grew. Passenger railroads struggled. Traffic that once flowed through Winslow Junction began disappearing. Branch lines closed. Stations shut down. Maintenance budgets shrank. Entire routes were abandoned. The very infrastructure that once symbolized growth now became expensive to maintain. By the 1960s and 1970s, much of the system had entered decline. The railroad kingdom was crumbling. Chapter 11: The Ghosts in the Woods. Today, Winslow Junction resembles an archaeological site. Walk through the area and you can still discover evidence of its former greatness. Massive embankments rise unexpectedly from the forest. Old bridge abutments emerge from the undergrowth. Railroad grades stretch into the distance. Abandoned alignments can still be identified from aerial imagery. Nature has reclaimed much of the landscape. Trees grow where tracks once lay. Roots split old foundations. Wildlife inhabits places once crowded with railroad workers. Yet the scale remains visible. Even after decades of abandonment, visitors quickly realize this was no ordinary railroad crossing. It was a transportation metropolis hidden in the Pine Barrens. Chapter 12: Legacy. Winslow Junction's greatest legacy is not a building. It is not a monument. It is not even a railroad. Its legacy is the story of how transportation shaped South Jersey. Without Winslow Junction, Atlantic City might have developed differently. South Jersey industries would have lacked critical transportation links. Thousands of railroad jobs would never have existed. Millions of passengers would have traveled by different routes. The junction helped connect communities, move goods, and fuel economic growth across an entire region. Today it survives as a forgotten giant, hidden beneath the pines. Silent, weathered, yet still impressive. And for those willing to explore its history, Winslow Junction remains one of the greatest railroad stories ever told in New Jersey.